In recent days, Tatiana Schlossberg, a former New York Times reporter, a former contributor to The Atlantic and The Washington Post, and the author of the best-selling book Inconspicuous Consumption, The Environmental Impact You Don't Know About, passed away from cancer on December 30th at the age of just 35. Her death has prompted widespread coverage across mainstream media in Europe and the United States. The reason so many outlets have focused on the passing of a journalist is that she also held another notable identity. She was the granddaughter of former US President John F. Kennedy. After giving birth to her second child in October last year, Schlossberg was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia accompanied by a rare genetic mutation. She later revealed that she had experienced almost no symptoms before the diagnosis. Despite undergoing chemotherapy, a bone marrow transplant, and a series of other treatments, her condition deteriorated rapidly, and she ultimately passed away. Schlossberg's death was unexpected and sudden, prompting many media outlets to once again recall the long-circulated notion of the Kennedy family curse. The so-called Kennedy family curse refers to the unusually high proportion of non-natural deaths among several generations of the Kennedy family, primarily those descending from Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. The causes of death have ranged from various accidents and rare illnesses to suicide and assassination, giving the impression that the family has been afflicted by some mysterious curse. While such claims may sound overly supernatural, the statistics are nevertheless striking. Including the recent death of Schlossberg, at least 12 members of the Kennedy family across 4 generations are believed to have died from non-natural causes. Although talk of curses and dark forces should not be taken seriously, one cannot help but wonder whether the probability is unusually high. The term Kennedy curse was first mentioned by Edward Kennedy, the fourth brother of President John F. Kennedy, in 1969. President Kennedy was assassinated at the end of 1963, and in the years that followed, a series of fatal incidents struck the family, leading Edward to begin suspecting the existence of a curse. In 1964, Edward Kennedy survived a plane crash but was seriously injured. In 1968, President Kennedy's third brother, Robert F. Kennedy, was assassinated while campaigning for the presidency. In July 1969, Edward Kennedy's car accidentally plunged off a bridge. Although he once again survived by sheer luck, the passenger in the vehicle drowned. A week later, in an interview with the media, Edward Kennedy could not help but remark that he suspected some dreadful curse was hanging over the Kennedy family, causing its members to suffer one calamity after another. From that point on, the phrase "the Kennedy family curse" spread widely through the media, taking on the character of an urban legend. Edward Kennedy's invocation of a curse is understandable. At that time, 3 of his brothers and 1 sister had already died as a result of accidents or sudden tragedies. After the idea of a Kennedy family curse began circulating, some media outlets and individuals started digging for its supposed origins, producing various theories about where the curse came from. One such claim held that Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., President Kennedy's father, had brought the curse upon the family by refusing to help Jewish refugees while serving as U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom during World War II, and even forbidding a Jewish rabbi from praying aboard a ship. Although such stories are completely unfounded, the media has nevertheless tended to link the Kennedy family's non-natural deaths with the notion of a curse. Strangely enough, after Edward Kennedy first mentioned the idea of a Kennedy family curse, the family seemed to experience a period of relative calm. For nearly a decade afterward, no major tragedies struck the Kennedys. However, in the 1980s, the curse appeared to reassert itself. In 1984, President Kennedy's nephew, David Kennedy, died from a drug overdose. In 1997, another nephew, Michael Kennedy, was killed in a skiing accident. 2 years later, an even greater misfortune struck. President Kennedy's own son, John F. Kennedy Jr., died when his private plane crashed into the sea at the age of 38, along with his wife and brother-in-law. John Jr.'s death was a huge blow to the Kennedy family. At the time, he was charismatic, had significant media influence, and enjoyed high political standing. He was widely regarded as the Kennedy family's crown prince and was seen as having strong potential to follow in his father's footsteps and run for the presidency. In many ways, his untimely death ended the possibility of a direct Kennedy descendant continuing the family's political legacy. Because of John F. Kennedy Jr.'s death, many members of the family became even more concerned about the so-called Kennedy family curse, and they increasingly distanced themselves from politics, turning instead to writing, law, or other fields that did not require public exposure. However, history has shown that even this could not escape the supposed curse. Between 2019 and 2020, 2 of President Kennedy's grandnephews died in separate accidents. Last year, misfortune struck again, this time affecting President Kennedy's granddaughter, journalist Tatiana Schlossberg. She had no warning of the sudden serious illness. It was only during a routine blood test after giving birth to her second child that she was unexpectedly diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, accompanied by a genetic mutation. After more than a year of treatment, there was still no significant improvement. In November, she had just written about her condition, and a few weeks later, she suddenly passed away. Tatiana Schlossberg's mother, Caroline Kennedy, is the only surviving child of President Kennedy. Over the years, she has witnessed the non-natural deaths of her father, uncles, and aunts, and now her own daughter has suddenly fallen ill and passed away. The so-called Kennedy family curse has brought her the very real pain of loss and grief. Caroline Kennedy once told the media, "I think about my father every single day, but he will never come back."